Mom secretly called off my baby shower because my perfect sister is getting a divorce, which is just absurd. But I shared the real reason why that marriage fell apart with everyone. I'm currently 33 and I was adopted by my parents. My biological mother abandoned me at a fire station soon after I was born. My parents had desperately wanted a child for years, yet they were unsuccessful in conceiving. Therefore, they chose adoption, hoping to fill a void in their lives. My adoptive mother, or mom as I call her, always tells me the story of when she first laid eyes on me. According to her, she was immediately overcome with love and knew without a doubt that I was destined to be her daughter. They put in so much effort to bring me home, and for that I'll always be thankful. They completed endless amounts of paperwork, attended countless interviews, and endured home visits just to ensure they could give me a safe and loving environment. I often wonder what would have happened to me if they hadn't adopted me and I was stuck in an orphanage. My parents did more than give me a place to live, they actually saved my life in numerous ways. I was their first child, and for a long while I received all their attention and love. They gave me endless amounts of affection and care during my younger years. However, unlike my parents, my grandparents on my mother's side completely rejected me. They continually told my parents that adopting me was a grave error and wouldn't acknowledge or talk to me. Their lack of warmth was palpable, and it deeply affected me. As a kid, it was beyond my comprehension why they acted toward me in that manner. One of my most heartbreaking memories from those years happened at Christmas time. Our whole family would travel to my grandparents' cabin for a vacation where we'd all swap presents. It was a happy experience, especially since it was my initial time participating in the festivities. Though I was given gifts by everyone else, my grandparents wouldn't give me any. They kept saying I wasn't a genuine member of the family, so they didn't see a reason to give me anything. That caused a major disagreement between my father and my grandparents. My dad, angry and wanting to defend me, lectured them for not treating me the same way as my cousins. He said I was part of their family because I was his and my mom's daughter, and that their conduct was wrong. When he announced he wouldn't join in the holiday if they continued to exclude me, strong feelings were present. My grandfather tried to excuse his parents' deeds by explaining they were old-fashioned and pleaded with my dad not to take it the wrong way. But my dad wouldn't give in. Since my mom wasn't willing to get back with him, he left with me. I recall feeling awful, even getting a tummy ache, like I was somehow the reason for my parents' argument. My dad later comforted me, telling me it wasn't my fault and that he loved me unconditionally. However, the feeling of responsibility stayed with me, combined with the sorrow of not being loved by my parents' side. Growing up, I remember feeling a certain way towards my grandparents. Honestly, I'd hoped their attitudes toward me would get better over time, but that sadly hasn't been the case. I can still feel their emotional distance. Because he witnessed how it affected me, my dad has made a deliberate effort to keep his contact with them to a minimum through the years, and he doesn't even go to family events anymore. Although my mom tries to smooth things over, my dad never got over how my mom's parents treated me. But things are different on my father's side. They're generally much warmer and more accepting. From the beginning, they embraced me wholeheartedly, making me feel like I truly belonged. My cousins on my dad's side have never questioned my place in the family, and they truly see me as a part of the group. We've celebrated so many holidays, birthdays, and family get-togethers together. Even now that we're all grown up, we still spend time together, remain close, go on trips, mark important events, and help each other out through good times and bad. So my life wasn't entirely negative. I was happy to be an only child for a long time. My parents gave me whatever I needed and always did their best to make me feel treasured and loved. Then 7 years down the road, something amazing happened. Against all odds, my mom became pregnant with my little sister. This was a complete shock, as my parents thought they couldn't have any more children. It really felt like a gift to everyone that my mom was going to have a baby. Although my parents and the rest of the family were happy about the coming baby, I couldn't shake this feeling of being a little jealous and worried too. I worried that with a biological baby coming, their affection and focus would possibly move away from me. This fear was made even worse by the knowledge of how my grandparents saw me, and I worried they could reject me once more. Luckily, my parents seemed to understand how I was feeling, and they sat down and spoke with me. They made me feel sure that I'd always be their first daughter, no matter what. My mom also mentioned how now I would have a younger sister to spend time with, which was so cool. After our talk, I felt so much better, and I was really looking forward to meeting my little sister. When she finally arrived, our entire family was overjoyed. I distinctly recall being so intrigued when I saw her for the very first time. Everything about her, from her small fingers to her bright eyes, appeared completely sweet, and becoming a big sister added a whole new element to my life. The way Claire treated me started to shift following each visit, and it wasn't for the better. She turned cold and acted mean to me with no clear cause. If I tried to play with her or just hang out, she'd shout at me until I backed off. My folks observed this shift too and attempted to discuss it with her, but Claire never provided any explanation for why she was acting this way, so they just figured it was something she was going through. Yet our relationship kept deteriorating as I got older. One afternoon, I returned home from school and decided to look in my closet. I found that every single piece of clothing in there had holes in it. There were random holes of different sizes cut into all my dresses. Initially, I questioned my sanity, wondering if I was making a mistake, but it was impossible for all my clothes to suddenly have holes. I immediately wanted to call my mother, who was equally shocked and perplexed. She proposed that maybe rats were responsible, but the quantity of holes appearing overnight didn't really fit with that. We were both just stunned by this bizarre situation. Some days later, I experienced another weird instance. My contact lenses, which I'd left on the table before showering, vanished without a trace. I hunted everywhere, but they were nowhere to be found. Because I didn't have backup glasses, I couldn't go to my classes that day. When I told my parents, they got annoyed with me for not being responsible, thinking I'd just lost them. I tried to explain that I'd never do something like that, but they didn't believe me and just chalked it up to me being forgetful. But everything reached a breaking point when I got back from school one day and found Claire messing around with my lipstick on my dresser. It was shocking, and I had to ask what she was doing in my space. Claire spun around, looking like she knew she'd done something wrong, and as I got closer, my stomach dropped because my whole lipstick collection, which I'd built over ages, was totally ruined. I was incredibly upset and furious, and all I could do was shout in total shock. Mom came flying into the room to check what was going on, and she was also stunned by the scene. With my lipsticks wrecked, she asked Claire about what she'd done, but Claire just said she was playing. I understand this type of thing might seem common with siblings, but I knew my little sister, and this wasn't her usual self. Up to that moment, I'd always believed in Claire, and I never thought she could be so intentionally mean. Still, when I thought about the past events and put them all together, it became clear she was the one who'd been cutting holes in my clothes and taking my contacts. I questioned her, seeking answers and wanting to understand why she would do things like that. Initially, my mom tried to calm things down, saying she couldn't believe Claire was responsible, but I couldn't let it go. I kept pressing Claire with questions until she admitted while crying that she had done everything. When I heard this, my mom went from disbelieving to suddenly worried. She asked Claire softly why she had done something so destructive. Claire admitted with tears streaming down her face that our grandparents had poisoned her thoughts, repeatedly telling her that I was adopted and shouldn't be living with them. They also stoked her jealousy, implying I was scheming to steal her inheritance and that our parents favored me over her. This manipulation had caused Claire to harbor resentment toward me. A wave of anger washed over me as I listened to Claire's confession. It was incredibly irritating because I'd kept silent for so long about the negativity my grandparents aimed at me. Watching them manipulate Claire like this, I felt they had stepped over a boundary. I figured that if Dad found out what had been happening, he'd be really upset and might even stop Claire from seeing them. Mom also seemed to realize this because she started encouraging me to let it go and offered to speak with Claire on her own. She stressed that we didn't need to involve Dad in this just yet. I wasn't so sure about her approach, feeling that Dad deserved to know the truth behind Claire's behavior, especially since our grandparents were the ones causing all the trouble. However, Mom strongly maintained that getting Dad involved could mean Claire would get unfairly reprimanded, which would make it seem like I didn't love my little sister enough. I forgave Claire, albeit reluctantly, and trusted Mom to deal with the situation with care. Unfortunately, even with Mom's attempts to fix things, the relationship between Claire and me never actually got any better. As time passed, the way she treated me just got worse. When she became a teenager, she turned even more mean and vicious. She made fun of how I looked and how much I weighed, making me feel very self-conscious. Every time I returned home from college, Claire would make nasty jokes and film them for her social media, which made me even more mortified. Her behavior towards my boyfriends made everything even harder. Whenever I introduced a boyfriend to my parents, Claire would openly flirt with them right in front of me. She even went so far as to imply that they could find someone who was better than me. Not only was this incredibly disrespectful, but it also felt incredibly embarrassing. Naturally, I would yell at her, and Dad would always side with me, reminding Claire that she had no business treating me like that, but Mom would usually stay quiet. I think she was still unwilling to acknowledge just how much my parents had contributed to the separation between Claire and me. Just 3 years ago, our grandparents paid for a trip and invited everyone, but as I anticipated, they purposely left me out. By that point, I had become accustomed to the exclusion, so it wasn't as painful as it used to be. However, Dad refused to go on the trip as a form of protest. This choice annoyed both Mom and Claire. Although Mom understood where Dad was coming from, she attempted to talk him out of it. Claire, on the other hand, had a huge fight with him, asking why he'd miss a family trip just because of me. She mentioned to him that I was grown up and didn't want to be included, which was absurd because I wasn't even on the guest list. She attempted to persuade him not to skip the trip because of me. Even though she begged, Dad didn't budge and wouldn't go without me. Once they got back, Claire shared a lot of photos with our cousins with descriptions like royalty and soulmates. Although it truly stung to see that my siblings still saw me as an outsider, I decided to keep my mouth shut. Over time, I started going to therapy to get better and build my self-assurance. My choice was also impacted by the fact that I'd found the man I loved, Matt. He had witnessed firsthand how inconsiderate my sister could be, and he pushed me to confront her. Taking his suggestion, I started talking to a therapist and discovered that the main reason I never challenged or confronted Claire was because, somehow, I felt bad about not being our parents' biological child. The unkind words from my mom's parents when I was little made me feel like I wasn't good enough and made me think of myself as inferior to Claire. Consequently, I let her boss me around. But as I started to heal and understand myself better, I slowly started to regain my sense of self-respect and self-belief. These days, I don't allow Claire to get away with being rude to me during family meals or get-togethers. If she mutters a snide remark about me, I make sure to give one right back. At first, it caught her off guard that I finally stood up for myself, but eventually she learned the difficult lesson that she can't push me around any longer. Nowadays, she keeps her thoughts to herself, regardless of how much she might dislike me. Unlike me, Claire isn't working in a great job, which is her biggest source of insecurity. She was jealous because I had more education and a much better paying career. Because I was financially secure, I had the flexibility to travel anywhere I wanted, whereas she still relied on our grandparents' financial help. So, to get to the main event that made me feel like I needed to share all this. Just a short time ago, I discovered that I was expecting a baby. It was wonderful news for Matt and me, as we had been trying for a while to get pregnant. When I called my parents to let them know the happy news, they were incredibly happy and told me how thrilled they were to meet their future grandchild. Both Matt and I have been reading lots of books about raising children to prepare ourselves and have put a lot of effort into redoing a guest room in our home into a nursery for our baby. This week, my baby shower was supposed to happen, and my cousins on my father's side of the family were managing everything. I was so excited to get together with my family and friends for this special occasion and share in the happiness. 2 days ago, Mom called me and shared some upsetting news. Claire was going to get a divorce. I was absolutely stunned because I had no idea her marriage was in trouble. I always thought Claire's husband, Cameron, was a good person, and even though I didn't go to their wedding, I was always cordial and amicable with Cameron whenever we happened to cross paths. We'd see each other at family get-togethers. It came to light that Cameron found Claire in bed with someone she worked with in their own home, no less. This realization sparked a huge argument between them, and Cameron threw Claire out. Because of this, Claire had no other option except to move back in with our parents. Dad, as you might expect, was really angry with Claire. He stated with absolute certainty that if she couldn't respect the vows of marriage, she deserved the divorce and to be completely independent. On the other hand, Mom thought it was just an error, a mistake that could possibly be repaired if Cameron and Claire went to couples therapy. Despite this, Cameron has remained steadfast in his choice to end the marriage and has stopped talking to my sister entirely. Considering all this, Mom told me that maybe it would be best to postpone my baby shower because Claire was so unhappy right now. I was shocked at what she said and gently mentioned that I had already sent out the invitations and made all the plans, so calling it off just wasn't possible. Mom maintained that Claire was in such a fragile place that witnessing my baby shower might be too difficult for her to handle. I pointed out to Mom that the world doesn't just center on Claire and that I was setting up the baby shower for my own baby, not for Claire or her problems. I made it crystal clear that if Claire didn't want to come, she could absolutely stay with my sister, but I wasn't changing my plans for the event. It was obvious that Mom was displeased with my choice and kept on pushing back, yet I stood my ground. Frankly, it was draining always witnessing Mom consistently side with and give Claire preferential treatment over me. I genuinely anticipated that following our argument, she'd either let it go or understand how unfair it was to suggest I cancel my own baby shower. Today I was excitedly anticipating my baby shower, and Mom was supposed to come get me, but we hadn't really spoken much since our last argument, so I made alternate plans to go to the location with a cousin. However, I was genuinely shocked when Mom turned up out of the blue to pick me up. I felt a glimmer of optimism, so I made arrangements to go to the venue with one of my cousins. However, I was pleasantly surprised when Mom showed up unexpectedly to pick me up. I saw this as a positive sign that she was finally offering me some support and that we might be able to put our disagreement behind us. I was utterly stunned when Mom came in, looking serious, and said she needed to tell me something. Initially, I worried about something terrible, and a surge of worry flooded over me. Nonetheless, Mom reassured me it wasn't anything awful and helped me get comfortable on the sofa so we could chat. Then she told me that since I'd refused to call off the baby shower myself, she decided to cancel it for me. I couldn't believe it. I just stared at her, bewildered, as she described how she believed she'd spared me some potential humiliation. Feeling utterly lost and annoyed, I demanded she clarify what she was talking about. My mother kept going, explaining that it wouldn't reflect well on me or our family to have a party when my sister was getting divorced. She thought that skipping a simple baby shower was a minor inconvenience to show support for my sister during this difficult period. I felt utterly violated and enraged. Every part of me wanted to yell at my mom for breaking my trust, but since I'm working on myself in therapy, I made myself stop. I squeezed my eyes closed tight, counted to 10, and desperately tried to get myself together. When I opened them again, the sadness and hurt were still there, but I managed to tell her very firmly to get out of my house right now. Being anywhere near her was unbearable after what she'd done. At that second, I felt like she'd not only destroyed my celebration, but had also dismissed my emotions and my independence as an adult and a mom-to-be. Ever since Mom stormed out, I've been a complete emotional mess. It seems like my feelings are a total roller coaster and the tears won't stop. I had to rely on Matt for comfort, and he's on his way over after hearing what happened. It's just hard to fathom that my own mother would treat me like this. Part of me is considering sharing what's really going on with my sister's divorce, knowing Mom is probably trying to keep it secret. It's possible that's why she shut down my baby shower. She didn't want anyone prying. I'm still trying to figure out the ethical thing to do, so I'm sharing this with you all. Update 1. I really appreciate all of your feedback. I've looked through all of the comments and I want to clear up a few things. To begin with, Claire is the person to blame for the baby shower being cancelled. Since Mom and she have always been so close, I'm certain my sister came up with the plan first. Furthermore, on the day my baby shower was cancelled, Claire texted me. She told me I shouldn't get so worked up about the event and that I should go easier on Mom. She then added that she didn't want Mom to be forced to deal with questions about her divorce all day, and that my family should just get it. On top of that, she also asked me to keep her affair with her boss a secret. Secondly, Mom attempted to call me numerous times after the fact and kept on trying to persuade me and defend her behavior. But this time, Matt wanted to talk to her. He began the discussion by sharing his thoughts and making it obvious how absurd it was that she canceled my baby shower without telling me. He made it absolutely clear that he wouldn't permit her to meet our baby if she continued showing me such blatant disrespect, which surprised my mom, but after what she did, I can't help but be on my husband's side. Ultimately, Dad isn't talking to Mom or my sister, since learning what happened after they canceled my baby shower. After that, he and my mom quarreled and decided to set up a new one, and neither my sister nor my mom will be on the guest list. Also, I talked to all my cousins, who contacted me after they got my mom's message about the shower being canceled. Everyone agrees my mom went too far and they don't want anything to do with her. I've also had people asking why I never told my dad about how my mom's parents were shaping Claire's bad opinions about me. The truth is, I had faith that my mom would handle the problem with Claire, as I didn't want to cause family drama. You know, sometimes when you're a kid, you're put in situations where you have to keep quiet, even when it's not easy. I hoped as a kid that my mom would take my side and stand up for me against her parents, but that didn't happen. It was obvious she favored her biological daughter over me, who was adopted. As I said before, what happened when I was a kid really damaged my trust, and that affected my world. Update number 2. I have a significant update for today, since both my mom and Claire wouldn't accept any blame for what they did. I figured I had to teach them a lesson so they would just leave me alone. I took their advice and wrote a long email to every member of my family, explaining why my sister was getting divorced. I didn't hold back in describing her affair with her boss, and how she shattered her husband's trust when he found out. I didn't stop with just that either. I also pointed out how my mom called off my baby shower because she was mortified by my sister's decisions in life, and because she was unwilling to address the issue head-on. I crafted the email thoughtfully, making absolutely certain. I was positive that every single word would make them experience the same rage and annoyance that they had caused me. I was certain that I was right to do what I did once I clicked the send button. That email was how I defended myself, showing everyone what was really going on behind the fake image my mom and sister projected of our picture-perfect family. As you might guess, my mom and sister responded exactly how I thought they would. They started calling me repeatedly, leaving voicemails packed with accusations. I purposely chose not to respond, letting their calls go to voicemail so I could listen to them later. My mom kept texting, demanding that I send another email retracting what I'd written, stressing that I shouldn't humiliate my poor sister, but I just kept ignoring her. I bet both of them are getting calls from the rest of the family, trying to find out if the things I wrote in the email were true. I don't have any regrets about what I did. I'm confident that my mom will think twice before trying to meddle in my affairs again. It wasn't just that, though. My grandparents on my mom's side tried to get in touch with me too. They must have read my email and were clearly upset that I exposed my sister. Despite their attempts to call me, I didn't answer, all for my own sake. I bet they're even more furious now, and honestly, that just makes me feel better. I'm here to give you another update like you've been asking for. My baby shower finally happened, and it was absolutely amazing. My aunts, uncles, and dearest friends all came together to give me the most incredible day, and I'm so appreciative of my dad and Matt. The decorations were flawless, the food tasted incredible, and the place was filled with happiness and buzz. That day was overflowing with affection and good vibes, and I couldn't be more thankful to everybody who made it a reality. Regarding my mom and Claire, things aren't great right now. My dad reached his breaking point with Claire's actions after she came back drunk from a date with her manager. Just to be clear, the man she's having an affair with is married with children, making the situation very wrong. When my dad saw her like that, he'd had it and told her to leave. He decided it was time for her to take care of herself and become self-sufficient. Claire had always lived at home, and even after she finished college and after she got divorced, she immediately moved in with her former husband, Cameron. I think my dad did the right thing by asking her to leave. At first, my mom wasn't on board with his decision, but eventually she backed down when he asked her if she wanted to go with Claire. I really don't know if Claire's staying in her own place now or maybe sleeping on friends' couches, but I am relieved that she hasn't asked me for assistance. I understand many of you were worried about how my mom's choices might affect my parents' marriage. Even with all of this, I doubt they will get divorced. I've noticed that they've been a couple for ages, and even with their struggles, they seem dedicated to their relationship. Even though my mother's behavior put a lot of pressure on our connection, I still treasure their marriage and I wish they could find a way to solve their problems. It's just frustrating that neither my mom nor Claire has ever said they were sorry. Even though my mom has tried to get in touch a few times, her messages are just about her pain, without any mention of how much she hurt me. It seems like she still doesn't grasp the depth of how her choices affected things. The worst part for me is that she could have tried to fix the issues between Claire and me a long time ago when we were kids, but she decided to overlook the red flags. Now it's become irreparable for us. My family is fractured and I hold her accountable. I'm going to cut off contact with my sister and my mom's side of the family completely because I don't want my son to be around any toxicity or bitterness. As for me and Matt, we're doing great. He's an incredible partner and he takes such good care of me. This may be the final time I discuss this topic because I want to move on and spend these last few weeks of my pregnancy feeling happy. This update is happening after I've already given birth, and it's a baby girl who, by the way, was born completely healthy, so I'm beyond thrilled. Matt has been my constant support through all of this, particularly with all the family drama or what's left of it. I'm at a loss for where to begin, but I'm going to do my best to lay it all out so you can follow along with what's been going on these past few months. The last thing I talked about was how my dad was upset with my sister and mom, feeling like they played favorites over the years. Well, my parents are getting a divorce now, or actually, it was my dad who made that call. My mom is still trying to stop it from happening. All of this really started a couple months ago, soon after my dad kicked Claire out of the house. One day, Claire returned to talk to my dad because she was having trouble finding places to stay in the city and she wanted to persuade him to let her back in. My dad denied her request again, claiming he couldn't keep indulging a spoiled child like her. A decent father would have done a better job raising her, and that's when Claire dropped the bombshell. She said that, regardless, he wasn't really her father. She regretted saying it the instant it came out of her mouth, but my dad pressed her for details. She quickly left the house and my dad started calling her repeatedly, leaving tons of messages, desperate for an explanation. When my mom got home from shopping and noticed the look of panic on his face, she knew exactly what was up. So she packed her bags and came to stay with us for a bit. Fortunately, we have a large house, so there was room for my dad. Eventually, everything came out in the open with a paternity test, and my dad painfully learned that Claire wasn't his daughter. Mom had already figured this out, and she'd confided in Claire because they were such good friends. It seems Mom had a romantic relationship with another man, and that's how she got pregnant. It was highly unlikely that Dad was the biological father because they'd been struggling to conceive for so long, but Mom, finally knowing she was going to have a child, decided to conceal the truth. She attempted to persuade Dad that they should go to counseling and that they could fix this mistake without a major issue, yet Dad completely rejected the idea and filed for divorce just a few days after. Since then, our families have become divided. My mom's family and my dad's family have split apart. It's easy to see where my loyalties lie. I haven't spoken to Claire or Mom because both of them are blocked on my phone. Although I did say a few words to Mom when she showed up at the house to talk to Dad, though they were essentially demands that she depart. Anyway, Dad has now found a separate place to live, and he's asking not to pay anything in the divorce settlement because we live in a state where cheating is a major factor in divorce cases. Furthermore, I'm aware that Claire has moved in with Mom, so this has worked out perfectly for her because she achieved her goals. She hasn't even tried to reach out to Dad to check in on how he's doing. This situation really shows that Claire is only concerned with her own needs. Update 5. This update is just to let you know that my parents' divorce is now finalized, and Mom had to sell the house. The court mandated that the property be split, therefore Mom had to sell it in order to give Dad his portion. It's a bit frustrating because even though she didn't have a job while he earned all the income, his affair seems to have benefited him in the financial settlement. As far as I understand it, Mom and my sister are currently sharing a place, using the proceeds from the house sale and Claire's income, but I doubt that situation will be sustainable for much longer. That's the extent of my awareness of their current arrangement, since our families hardly communicate anymore after everything that's transpired.